We're crossing the halfway mark of 2023, marking a milestone year for the PS5 as stock issues finally begin to subside, next-gen only releases become a bit more common, and we had the full release of the PSVR 2. But does that mean that Sony is actually having a good year? With another 6 months to go, I'm here to discuss the ups and downs of 2023 so far, and how we think the year is shaping up for Sony. Hello folks, this is Aaron from Push Square, and today, to help me break down this mighty topic, I'm joined by the one and only Jordan Midler from VGC. Thanks for stopping by today, Jordan.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. I think as the internet's preeminent PlayStation fanboy, it's about time that I'm making an appearance on this show.
Yeah, I know actually. Is this the first time? I think we've had many almost appearances over the last year or so. But I just really wanted to start out by asking, is there something that kind of stands out to you so far that has been Sony's moment of 2023? How do you think they're doing?
2023 so far, I think they're doing pretty badly actually. I think their moment was the PlayStation Showcase, and how is this a swearing broadcast or is this a...
You can swear if you... I can bleep. I'll bleep, but...
Okay. How they f***ed it up with the PlayStation Showcase. I think especially what followed from Microsoft. I think if they could do that again, they would maybe set their stall out a bit more in terms of what they have to show for the rest of the year. You'd hope that PSVR 2, which we'll talk about in a wee while, would have been the moment, but I think that was a moment for all of a day, and then it kind of faded from the background. But yes, I think it has been a tumultuous year for Sony, only really because they've had so many good ones in a row. But yeah, it's not been a great one for me.
Yeah, I do think that my own kind of thing that stands out to me is really the lack of communication and just really any big moment, because it seems kind of like you're touching on there that they've just been coasting off of the success of PlayStation in general over the last, even just if we're saying the last 3 years of PS5, but before that as well. And I don't think there's been a big communication there, and the showcase should have been that moment but wasn't really that moment. So I think it is a kind of weird time, because I feel like it's like they're almost getting a little too cocky. Yeah. You know, we've been doing well, we don't really need to clear up why you should be buying a PlayStation. People know, that's, I feel like, the attitude that they've got so far. But obviously, starting off at the beginning of the year or earlier on in the year, we had the PSVR 2, which I felt like should have been a far bigger deal than it came across with the marketing and stuff. Do you feel like they've done a big enough a job to push that?
Well, part of the issue is they were only originally selling it on PlayStation Direct, so you inherently lose a bit of that kind of in-store marketing from that. But also, I think they were conscious of the fact of just how expensive it was, and how we're in this kind of global recession and cost of living crisis, and how the amount of people that could actually afford one is so low. And is it worth them putting advertising dollars into this when they could be reallocated to, say, Spider-Man later in the year, put that on a few more billboards, a few more buses, when that's obviously going to be a huge smash? I just think that it's been spoken about on the VGC podcast. You can go check that out. But it seemed like more of a Sony incentive than a PlayStation one. From a technology standpoint, Sony Corporation were we want to make this. And PlayStation were okay, fine, we have developers that are willing to support it. But I still think that at this point, PlayStation VR 2, I wouldn't be surprised if the biggest game to ever come out for that is Horizon at the launch. Because by this point, I expected them to be okay, we've done the deal with Valve, we have Half-Life, we've got basically all the big hitters. But yeah, you don't really hear people talking about PlayStation VR 2, do you?
No, well, that's the thing. It felt like there was only really a buzz amongst the enthusiasts of VR, because I've always been quite a big fan of the PlayStation VR, played a bit of the Oculus, and I was really excited for this. And what I've played of it as well is it's a really good device. The technology is impressive, it's leaps and bounds ahead of what came before, and I do think at the moment it's the best version of a VR product that you can buy. But it does feel like they just they had this big launch where they're we've got 40 something games or whatever it was, and then it just went dead. I almost feel like if it would have been a better idea for them to spread some of that launch out a little bit, because we had since then what we've had is The Walking Dead. We just had C Smash VRS. You know, there's not really been like a big game in my eyes, at least what I'm thinking of at the moment. And that is, it's kind of like the point of these marketing pushes is to keep it in the public consciousness for long enough, and they've not really done that, I don't think, with the PSVR 2.
No, they needed more games like Horizon where they have these first party IPs that are, even if they're worked on by like some other studio, like they needed more like that, like some kind of remember that Batman Arkham VR game that was basically just a walkabout simulator? They should have done something where you're like walking through the safe zones in The Last of Us or something like that, like a tiny wee side story that maybe takes 2 hours to complete, but they need something like that.
Do you think we're going to get like a big kind of AAA game announced over the rest of this year?
No, I think it's done. I think the only thing you maybe eventually get Half-Life Alyx, but I don't think Sony's putting any money into big by their standards games, because it's just not played out the way that maybe they expected this, but I don't know.
I mean, they did say, was it at the showcase, that it was selling better than what the PSVR had at this point, at least. But yeah, I do think if you're really like tapping into such a niche market, you need stuff to convince people to go to it. And so far, they've just not really done that beyond Call of the Mountain, which even in itself was okay, you know. One of the big pushes though, obviously, that they're having with this, well, at the showcase, as they mentioned, was the Project Q handheld device. And I don't know about you, but I was so disappointed in this thing.
I still don't even really understand what it is, because when it first popped up, I was like, fuck, here we go, Vita 2, finally. But it seems very strange, especially in the light of the current ongoing Microsoft Activision trial, where they're like, oh, we're under $300. It's like, it better be under $300 for what it's doing. Like, it's essentially nothing. I don't know what the appeal is of this and who this would sell to. This feels like it will be bargain price pretty soon. Yeah,
I've actually seen quite a few people online talking about like, oh, I can't wait for this, I can't wait to get this. But to me, when I first saw it, I thought it was at least a cloud gaming thing, and I was like, yeah, okay, there's room for improvement with the Sony handheld thing. There's clearly a market for it. But for this to just be a shared, like a remote play thing, which you can do anyway, you know, you can connect your PlayStation controller to your iPhone. You've got a Backbone 1 controller that you can use. This is literally just you're getting the DualSense capabilities attached to a screen, but again, you can just get a clip-on with your PlayStation remote to add to sit your phone onto it. I don't understand. Like, it's not the big deal that I think Sony were trying to make it out to be.
No, it was also announced so strangely, like that going back to that showcase, like it was. They just dropped it in there out of nowhere and then didn't really explain the use case for it. Like, they're going to have to come out and do a little presentation just on that.
Like, here's why this is better than what you've already got.
Yeah, but it seems pretty dead on arrival to me so far.
Yeah, and even if it is, they were saying under 3. See if under 300 means 250 or 200. Like, I'm not buying that.
It's got, you know, I think it'll be based on the price of that fancy controller. I bet it's like 180. And like $200, so £180.
Yeah, nah, it's not. I mean, I'm always open to be, you know, have my mind changed, but no, it's not looking great so far. Another thing that some people are always hit or miss on are the PS Plus updates with the extra and premium. Now we've just passed 1 year of the new revamped 3-tier system being out in the wild. And like, do you subscribe to this? Are you like a fan of this kind of system that they've tried to have?
I'm subscribed to it via, like, Sony put our accounts on it for a couple of years, so I'll have it. But if I wasn't getting it for free, I would pay for I wouldn't pay for the top tier, because I think the retro stuff's been really bad, but I would pay for the tier below that, because I think the games library is ridiculous and I don't think it gets talked about enough. Like, I know people harp on about Game Pass because like they have new games and stuff like that, but in terms of like library titles, I think the games that are in the PlayStation library are better than the ones in Game Pass by some distance.
Yeah, the extra stuff is like, I never fully understood why premium would be the top tier.
Yeah,
I think if I was to decide on it on my own, like I was the one putting it out, I'd do it as a 2-tier system, and then it's just you're making extra seem even better because there's also retro games, but making that the next financial jump and you're getting 3 games a month you know. And most of them, I have to say, are complete cheats as well, because they say, oh, it's supposed to be the PS1, 2, and 3 catalogue, but you're getting PS4 remasters in there.
Yeah.
That doesn't count to me, you know. Like, it's supposed to be games you can't play on PlayStation 4 or 5, and if you can already, then it's just defeating the purpose.
Yeah, it's a strange offering, and I don't think they're very good at showing it off in the way that Xbox are like excellent at showing it off, in terms of what they've got. But yeah, it's a strong service. I just think they need more clarity, and they need to work out. Apologies. They need to work out how to get PlayStation 3 games running natively on the PlayStation 5, because as long as it's a streaming thing, people won't care. But like, if they could come out and be like, okay, we've worked it out, I think that'd be absolutely massive.
Yeah, because you really just, even though they say there's like minimums of what you need internet-wise to play this well, it's just never quite a realistic level in my mind.
I have like NASA internet, and it still doesn't run the way I would want it to. Like, I could not have better internet in this country, and it still doesn't run properly. So
yeah, it's not really something that most people can actually use. That I do agree though, PS Plus Extra is well worth the money. I'm actually quite often trying to get folk to buy it, because I'm like, if you're, especially when the games are £70 now, or at least on release, if you're wanting to just try out a bunch of stuff, like, it's really good value that way. Because I mean, like, Demon's Souls is on it, Horizon Forbidden West,
the best game on PlayStation 5, Returnal is on there. So.
Yeah, exactly. So like, wait, is Returnal on there?
Returnal's
I must
on
have missed that. Yeah, Returnal is the best game on PS5. Yeah, I think they do need to do it. I don't think it gets the credit it deserves, because I do think it's always seen as like the Game Pass competitor.
Yeah.
But in my mind, there's more on Extra that I would play than there is on Game Pass. And that's not just me saying that because I'm like the PlayStation guy. Like, I genuinely do think that.
No, me too. Obviously, Game Pass has the leg up with like the new releases and stuff like that, and that can't be understated. But if we're talking purely on library titles, I think PlayStation has it.
So looking ahead then to the rest of the year, do you have like hopes, expectations, anything like that to maybe turn the tide for Sony in 2023?
I think we're probably due another showcase later in the year, just to set out their stall for 2024, because that's not something they really did. I think outside of Spider-Man, they're going to cede a lot of space to Starfield this year, which is just obvious. There's a mountain of games coming out this year, so it'll probably be quite a quiet like back half of the year for Sony. But we've got to start hearing about, like, at some point we have to start hearing about the next kind of slate of PS5 games. Like, when are we hearing about Tsushima 2? But obviously Factions is kind of up in smoke at this point. When are we hearing about what the other big studios are doing? I think they'll be fine. I just think it's not, obviously we've got Wolverine coming, and we've probably got another Ratchet and Clank coming as well, but it's not sustainable for them always to have banger years.
Yeah.
And I feel like because they somehow skirted the pandemic so well to get like God of War and Ratchet and Clank and Returnal and all this stuff out, they're due a bit of a quiet one. And I think any year where you have Spider-Man isn't a quiet year, but by their standards it kind of is. So I think it'll be a lot of strategically setting up 24 to be a banger, which I could see being Wolverine, to be honest.
I do think, looking at this year and really what the aim is for Sony, I think with the stock issues subsiding, I think they are probably looking at this as a year where they're gaining more people. So like, if you're looking at buying a PlayStation and then you go, right, maybe you've got Spider-Man, which I think for like a kind of casual gamer looking to maybe upgrade, that is the game that will do it. I know a lot of people that aren't even really into games, but like Spider-Man, that they'll come out for that. So you have that. I think that's enough to really convince some people, but you've also looking at it in a standpoint from like a new player who has the option of the last like 2.5 years worth of exclusive content, which is pretty good. Although something that I'm going to discuss in another video is that I think something that's a bit weird is the fact that Sony is trying to make them available in other areas.
Yeah.
So sometimes I still think console-based gaming is like the best option for like a more casual gamer over something like a PC. But for those that are inclined to maybe go to PC, there are less and less reasons, I suppose, to buy a PlayStation 5 in terms of I can get these exclusive games on PC anyway. We know they're coming at some point. Even just the last, 6 months, we've had Returnal, The Last of Us, Ratchet and Clank.
Yeah.
So there is an argument there, but for those that are just always going to consider console gaming, you've got a really nice backlog of games, all of them available for a simple price on the PlayStation Plus Extra. So I do agree that there's a bit of a leeway for them to have a chiller year, I suppose. But for me, I do think we need another showcase. I do think we need something to really highlight the games that we should be getting excited for after the ones that we know about, you know?
Yeah, I think there's nothing wrong with... I really, really think that showcase could have used a couple of logo trailers, like literally just Jim Ryan at the end, be very clear about it, be like, we've showed you stuff that's soon, we've showed you stuff that's 2024, now here's some stuff to look forward to in 2025 and beyond. That's when you show the logo for Ghost of Tsushima 2, which is obviously the next thing they're working on. That's when so who else? Sony Bend, you show like a logo for their game. I don't think you evoke any Naughty Dog stuff until Factions is out.
Yeah. But
I think as soon as Factions is out, you need to come out and say what they're doing next, because they are the crown jewel. You have this like multimedia superstar of The Last of Us, and it's so I bet you by the time the second season of that show comes out, they are talking about their next game, and and that's kind of, if that is The Last of Us 3 or whatever it ends up being. So yeah, I think there's a lot of room for, because we don't know what Bluepoint's doing, we don't know what Sony Santa Monica's well, they obviously just wrapped Ragnarok, but we don't know what a lot of these big studios are doing. So Jim could come out and say, here are your logos for the next couple of years. We'll talk about them when we talk about them, focus on the 2024 stuff, but here is, those kind of hype moments, so that people don't go away from the showcase like they did, being like, well, Spider-Man looked cool and it's cool that Metal Gear's back, but this is a bit... Yeah, no, I think for that showcase to have the highlight of the show to be a game that we knew was coming anyway. Yeah. And also, I think the kicker for that was that they didn't reveal the date until the Game Awards later, which just was weird to me. Made them look so small time. Yeah, so we'll see. I do think there needs to be a bit of a clearer communication with what's to come, but it definitely is a bit of a more easier going year for them, but they're obviously still doing pretty well. The PlayStation is selling. Oh yeah. There's good games on there. But yeah, I think from the kind of persistent fan base, there needs to be something more. But that will just about do it. Thank you everyone for listening, and let me know down in the comments what you've been thinking about Sony's 2023 so far. Is it shaping up to be a legendary time for PlayStation, or is it missing the mark? While you're typing out your comments, you could also leave a like in the video. That really helps us out. And even better, hit that big old subscribe button to stay up to date in the world of PlayStation. Anyway, I want to thank you, Jordan, for joining us today. And all that's left to say is that I've been Aaron, this has been Push Square, and I'll see you in the next one.